I was trying so hard to be the talking suit, to be what my boss and my boss's boss and my peers perceived as like a successful banker. So I was trying so hard to live within this image. I was kept putting more pressure on myself to like be and act like something I wasn't. And I was in the middle of a meeting and I excused myself to go to the bathroom and I closed the door and I'm in a big executive's bathroom, close the door and I hit the deck. I totally pass out. So I'm like sitting in a pool of sweat, looking as like white as a ghost, hoping that when I went back in, I didn't look as bloodless as I felt, throwing water on myself. I get through the meeting. I don't think anyone completely knew what happened, but I got home and the first thing I'm thinking, instead of how do I start listening to my body and myself, instead of doing that, I'm literally thinking, how do I camouflage it? I can't show this weakness. I can't show that I'm like mentally having this anxiety. If I do that, that's perceived as unsuccessful. So I went to a psychiatrist and I got Xanax and beta blockers. But then I was thinking, well, I can't be popping pills in the middle of a meeting if I'm a panic attack. So I started hiding them in Altoid cases.
Oh my God.
And every day I would bring them to work. But then what happened is people would hear it and they would want a mint and they or make too much noise. And I'm like, well, how can I camouflage then? And it got so crazy. I took Listerine strips, Listerine strips.
Yeah.
Took them all out and I would put in my Xanax and my beta blockers and I'd put them in my coat. And I was doing so much to camouflage my mental situational anxiety within my career. Because to your point, in most organizations, not all, but in most, they don't have time for that. If you're perceived as having panic attacks, you're weak. You can't be in front of a client. Why can't you do that?
Yeah.
And so I just compartmentalized my emotions and tried to, as far as I could, disconnect my emotions with my behaviors, which is so unhealthy.
I think what I found out too is when I went to a company and I was in sales for 10 years. When I went to a company that was just a 9 to 5, that I closed my laptop at 5 o'clock. I didn't hear from anyone on Slack or that was the healthiest I ever felt. And I was making just as much money. Yeah. I'm like, it was just, when you value yourself first, I feel like that's what's going to create a more positive work environment for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I like the point you brought up though. I think people need to be as loyal to their employers as their employers are to them.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that we are all free agents, right? We're not, and I talk about this in the book too. We're not LeBron James. We're not Serena. We don't have these contracts locked in. So what are we doing to kind of like protect ourselves and take care of ourselves? And then how are we managing our finances? Just make sure, they want to pull the plug or pull the rug right under you. Are you prepared? And that also, so I went on the show. It's hilarious. This memo I put together to get approval from my boss to go on the show is hilarious. And so it was like a hot piece of paper. It went from his hand, so the regional's hand to this hand, ended up at the president of the bank.
Oh, you're talking about the Bachelor.
The memo to go on the Bachelor.
Oh,
while
okay.
I was working at the bank. And the president of the bank's like, sure, the kid's been good here. Let him go. And then the HR executive storms into his office like, do you know what you just approved? This is a story that was told to me by my manager. Do you know what you just approved? And he's like, yeah, I'll be fine, But I went on the show, got back from the show, went right back to work. And then it was about a year later so Caitlin's podcast, you've been on it, Off the Vine, she's got these confessions, right? And so she tells a confession. You'll get a kick out of this.
Mine was how I got drunk in the middle of a work day.
That was yours? Yeah. Oh, sweet. So you might have gotten in trouble if you were still working. So
you were still working at the company.
Working at the company. And she tells a confession about the first time we hook up, we're fully clothed, we dry hump and she orgasms. So like that's her funny confession. People are laughing, right? Yeah. Well, that hits like all these headlines and stuff. And like people are blah, blah, blah. My boss calls me. He's like, hey, have you Googled yourself today? And I was like, no, it's not what I do when I wake up. Yeah. Like, nope, sure haven't. And he's like, why don't you Google yourself and call me back? So I Googled myself.
And call me back.
Call me back, right? Call him back. I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? I didn't say anything. What's the best didn't come out of my mouth? Yeah. And he literally says, they're expecting you to come in today and resign. I was like, well, I'm not resigning. I've worked for this company for 10 years. I've had 7 promotions, every single annual review, which I have paper, I've met or exceeded expectations. And these are like words that didn't even come out of my mouth. And I was pretty much putting this ultimatum, like no podcasting, no social media, no side hustle without the bank's approval.
What?
Or you got to go restart yourself outside the company. And let's just have let's have cordial exit. And so what I did was just that I restarted myself
And look where you
outside
are
the
now.
company.
Yeah, you have a book.
Created a
Yeah,
company
yeah.
called Restart to help people do it the same way.
There you go. Oh, that's okay. So you have a company to help people do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that's, I think we unfortunately live in an unequitable economy right now, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like really, you
Totally.
need to work, right?
Totally.
Capitalism and all that, and in order to survive. But a lot of people, I think, are seeing that they value their mental health more than their company does, or that it's being pushed to limits where they're becoming unwell,
Mhm.
right? I remember one job I was in that was the first time I faced depression. It was just because I was like chasing something that I knew I never would get, but I was
Yeah.
like told that I should still chase it. So that's interesting that you have a company for people who might want to, kind of pursue their own thing and
Yeah.
outside of their current 9 to 5.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's really focused on refining your career, like
Mhm.
writing your own story as opposed to be it written for you in personal finance. So
Yeah.
those three big pillars. Um, yeah, and it's been a really cool journey, and like to see the impact. Like we have a newsletter networking. We have all this stuff.
Mhm.
Just if you have any interest, go follow Restart, and you'll figure out what we got going on. I don't need to do a whole pitch, but the idea is that we're making an impact on right now 1 million eyeballs a week. And so when we get the letters in that are like, "Hey, with your help and your guidance, we started our business," or "I finally pursued the industry I wanted to pursue," or "I'm finally doing this," or "I finally got rid of my credit card debt." Like it's so I've never had career satisfaction
Mhm.
like I have when I hear these stories.
Wow.
It's just the best.
Wow.
So it's been
Wow.
a wild ride,
Cool.
wild
Yeah.
ride. Yeah.
And you got out of that other situation. Because again, if they didn't value you enough, if it's something that you had no control of.
Well, it's just like
Yeah.
one of these things, like one that's the thing with, your company, you dedicate so much to it and I worry about it so much. I mean, I'm doing so much as camouflaging panic attacks so I can still exceed expectations or at
Yeah.
least be perceived in the eyes of others as successful. And one mishap, one wrong
Mm.
turn that didn't even come out of my mouth, and
Yeah.
you could be gone like that.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the Dear Media YouTube channel for more videos.